"Fire him," the CEO ordered. Then she opened his file and froze at his real name. They were laughing when Derek Marsh made the accusation. He stood at the head of the conference table and said it with the precision of a man who had been building toward this moment for 3 days. His legal name is James Whitfield, not James Cole. He falsified his employment application. He's a plant from Harlow Consulting, and I have the documentation. The Meridian Group's senior leadership meeting on the 23rd floor had 12 people in it. Derek Marsh, head of competitive intelligence, 44, stood at the presentation screen with the composed certainty of someone who had constructed an argument and was confident in its architecture. The screen showed 3 documents side by side: a CV, a background check, and a corporate registry entry for Harlow Consulting Group that listed, among its senior advisors, a James R. Whitfield. Vivian Cole sat at the head of the table. She had been CEO of the Meridian Group for 4 years and had built it, in those 4 years, from a regional consulting firm to a nationally recognized practice by making a small number of correct decisions consistently and learning quickly from the ones that were wrong. She was good at her job. She had been looking at Derek Marsh's presentation for 4 minutes. She looked at the photograph of James Cole, the man who had been working in her strategy division for 3 months, who had produced the best competitive analysis her team had seen in 2 years, who ate lunch at his desk because he had a 315 pickup, and compared it to the photograph on the corporate registry. The photographs were different ages of the same face. She said, "Fire him." She said it the way she made decisions, without theater, with the information she had, committing to the action that the information required. She said it in front of 11 people. She went back to the meeting. What Derek Marsh did not know, what the 11 other people in the room did not know, what Vivian Cole herself did not know, was that the file her HR director was opening at that exact moment in the HR office on the 19th floor contained a legal name that was going to stop everything. That Vivian Cole had not seen that name in 7 years. That 7 years ago, that name, James Whitfield, had been attached to a man who had spent 3 months working without pay for her then struggling firm, had rebuilt her pricing model from its foundations, had left before she could thank him properly, and had said, on his last day simply, "You built something worth saving. I'm glad I could help." She had tried to find him afterward. She had looked for James Whitfield, consultant. She had found nothing because he had gone by Jim, and the James Whitfield she had been looking for was not in any professional database she could access because he had, at that point, been going through a divorce and a professional transition and had not wanted to be findable. She had given up after 6 months. She had thought of him occasionally in the way you think of people who did something for you that you never adequately acknowledged. She had been looking at his face for 3 months. By end of business today, Derek Marsh would be in a meeting with HR and the general counsel that he had not anticipated. Caroline Fenn would be on a formal warning. And Vivian Cole, who had issued a termination order in front of 11 people based on a case that was built on accurate facts and a completely false conclusion, was going to have to do something she had done very few times in 4 years. Reverse a public decision. But first, her HR director had to open the file. 8 hours earlier, James had woken at 5:40. His daughter Zoe was at the kitchen table when he came downstairs, which was not unusual. She had been a 6:30 person since she was born, and it was now 6:40, and she had presumably been sitting there for a while. She was in her school uniform, and she was reading, which was also not unusual. She was 8. She read the way people breathe, because the alternative didn't occur to her. She looked up when he came in. "You have the conference face," she said. "What's the conference face?" "The one where you're deciding something." He made coffee. He stood at the window. He was deciding something. He had been deciding it for 3 months. Not whether to tell Vivian Cole that the name on his employment file was not the name she had known 7 years ago. But when and how? He had come to the Meridian Group as James Cole, his mother's surname, his legal middle name, the name he had used since the divorce. Since the complications of being professionally associated with his ex-wife's firm had required some navigation. He had not falsified anything. The application had asked for the name he worked under. He worked under James Cole. The background check had come back clean because James Cole's background was clean. He had not anticipated that he would be placed in the strategy division that reported to Vivienne. He had not anticipated recognizing her on his first day. He had stood in the doorway of the first team meeting and understood, in 2 seconds, that the woman at the front of the room was the same woman he had consulted for 7 years ago. And he had understood, in 2 more seconds, that she did not recognize him because he was 7 years older, had a beard now, and she had never known him by anything other than Jim. He had sat down. He had decided to do the work and let the work establish itself before he addressed the name. He had been waiting for the right moment for 3 months. He had not found it, and now the right moment felt the way things feel when you have waited past the window for them. He thought about this. "The thing you're deciding," Zoe said. She had put down her book. "Is it about work?" "Yes," he said. "Is it about Vivian?" He looked at his daughter. "Partly," he said. Zoe picked up her book. "Tell her today," she said. "Whatever it is, you've been deciding it for too long." He looked at his daughter. She was reading again. She had the quality she always had when she said something important and then returned to what she was doing. The specific composure of someone who has said the true thing and considers the conversation complete. He made her breakfast. He drove her to school. He said goodbye at the gate with the specific completeness of the routine they'd built, the kiss on the cheek, the brief squeeze, the have a good day that contained everything a father wanted a day to contain for his daughter. He drove to the Meridian Group. He did not tell Vivian that morning. He had the work, a competitive analysis of the Northeast market that was due Friday, and that he wanted to finish before he added the complexity of the name conversation. He had been going to tell her Friday. He did not know, at his desk at 2:15, that Derek Marsh was in a conference room on the 23rd floor presenting 3 documents to 11 people. He did not know, at 2:47, when his HR director called and said, "Can you come to the 19th floor? There's a situation," what the situation was. He found out when he arrived at the 19th floor and saw, through the glass wall of the HR director's office, Vivian Cole sitting across from Patricia Aldrin, with a file open on the table between them. He saw, on the first visible page of the file, his name. His full name, James Robert Whitfield. He stopped in the hallway. The file had arrived on Patricia Aldrin's desk at 2:35. Patricia was HR Director, 53, in the role for 8 years. A person whose professional temperament was the specific combination of efficiency and care that good HR required. She had received the termination order through the standard channel, a signed memo from the CEO's office, citing employment application discrepancy and pending investigation. She had opened the file to begin the process. She had seen the name. She had sat with the name for approximately 45 seconds. She had then walked to Vivian Cole's office and said, "I need 5 minutes before this goes any further." Vivian had looked at her. Patricia had the expression of someone who had been doing this job for 8 years and was not given to dramatic interruptions. Vivian had come to the HR office. She was looking at the name when James appeared in the hallway outside the glass wall. Their eyes met through the glass, His expression did not do the thing that guilty expressions do. He did not look away, did not show calculation. did not manage his face into something produced. He looked at her with the specific quality she had been watching for 3 months. Direct, settled, exactly what he was. She had seen that quality for the first time 7 years ago. She had not known what she was seeing. She knew now. She stood up. She opened the office door. "Come in," she said. He came in. Patricia looked at the file, at the CEO, at the man. "I should," she began. "Stay," Vivian said. "This needs a witness." She sat back down. She looked at the file. She looked at James. "James Robert Whitfield," she said. "Yes," he said. "Jim Whitfield," she said. "Yes." She was quiet. "You didn't recognize me," he said. "On the first day. I understood. The beard. 7 years. But I recognized you." "Why didn't you say something?" she said. "Because I had come here to do work," he said. "And I wanted the work to be what established me, not a history you didn't know we had." She looked at the file, at Patricia, back at James. "Derek Marsh thinks you're a plant from Harlow Consulting," she said. "I'm not," he said. "My ex-wife's firm is Harlow Consulting. That's the association. My legal name is on the corporate registry as an advisor from before the divorce. I was never a Harlow employee. I was a named advisor, which is a formality that carried over and that I've been meaning to have removed for 2 years." He held her gaze. "I used my mother's name at work because the professional association with Harlow created a conflict of interest implication that I didn't want to navigate before I'd established what I could do. It's the name I work under. The background check was under James Cole. James Cole's background is clean." She looked at him. "The employment application asked for the name I work under," he said. "That's what I gave them." Vivian looked at the document in the file. She looked at Patricia. "Is this a falsification?" she said. Patricia had been reading the application. She set it down. "No," she said. "The application asks for the name used professionally. The background check was conducted under James Cole. Both are accurate." She paused. "This is an omission of a legal name. It is not a falsification." Vivienne looked at the table. She thought about 2:40 in the conference room with 11 people watching. She thought about fire him said with the authority of a person making a decision based on the information available. She thought about the information that had been available and the information that had not been, and the specific confidence with which Derek Marsh had said, "I have the documentation." She thought about 3 months of competitive analysis, about the Northeast Market Report due Friday, about the specific quality of work that had a signature, not a literal signature, but the quality that told you something about who made it. She thought about 7 years ago and a man named Jim who had rebuilt her pricing model in 3 months and left before she could thank him properly. She thought, "I have been looking at him for 3 months." "Patricia," she said. "The termination order." "I haven't processed it," Patricia said. "I called you first." Vivienne looked at James. "I issued that order in front of 11 people," she said, "based on an accusation made with accurate facts and a false conclusion." She held his gaze. "I'm going to have to reverse it in front of the same 11 people." He looked at her. "You don't," he began. "I do," she said. "This is not a quiet correction. This was a public order. The reversal needs to be public." He was quiet. "Before that," she said, "I need to say something that is not about the work." Patricia made a slight movement, not quite standing, but repositioning toward the door. "Stay," Vivienne said again. "You're a witness, and I want a witness." Patricia stayed. Vivienne looked at James. "7 years ago," she said, You spent 3 months working without pay for a firm that was going under. You rebuilt the pricing model. You saved 32 jobs. You left before I could. She stopped. I have been looking for Jim Whitfield since you left. I could not find you. I thought about you as someone I owed a debt I hadn't been able to pay. James was quiet. I have been looking at your face for 3 months, she said, and I did not know. He looked at the table. He looked at her. I had a beard, he said. You had a beard, she said. 7 years. The context was completely different. She exhaled. That is not an excuse. I should have. She shook her head. I don't know what I should have done. I know what I need to do now. She looked at Patricia. Can you get me a room with the 11 people from the 2:40 meeting? Patricia looked at her watch. By 4? By 4, Vivian said. Patricia left. Vivian and James were alone. Jim, she said. James, he said. I go by James now. She looked at him. James. She said it differently than she'd been saying it, not the name from the file, but the name she now understood she already knew. The Northeast report, is it done? 80%, he said. Can you have it by Thursday? She said. He looked at her. Yes, he said. Good, she said, because I need it. She looked at the file, at the documentation Derek Marsh had assembled, at the photograph on the corporate registry, a younger version of the face across from her. And I need to understand how Derek built this case, the facts he used and the conclusion he drew from them. That's a different kind of problem. Yes, he said. It is. She looked at him. Are we all right? She said. He looked at her for a moment. Ask me after the 4 o'clock meeting, he said. The 4 o'clock meeting had the same 11 people, the same 23rd floor conference room, a different screen, and Vivian Cole standing at the head of the table. She said, I issued a termination order at 2:40 today. I'm rescinding it. The room was quiet. She said, the case presented to me was accurate in its facts and wrong in its conclusion. The name discrepancy is real. The accusation of corporate espionage is not. I verified this directly with Patricia Aldrin and James Cole in the hour following the meeting. She looked around the table. James Cole is James Whitfield. He uses his mother's name professionally. The background check was conducted under the name he uses professionally. It is clean. The Corporate Registry Association with Harlow Consulting predates his work here and is a legacy administrative matter that has no bearing on his current role or his conduct at Meridian. She looked at Derek Marsh. Derek Marsh's face had the specific quality of someone who has watched their architecture fail and is deciding how to respond. He had been right about the facts. He had been wrong about the meaning. He had presented the wrong conclusion as though it were documented. He had done this in front of 11 people and a CEO who had acted on it. Derek, she said, the case you presented included a conclusion that you stated as documented fact. The conclusion was not documented. The documentation you had supported the name discrepancy. It did not support espionage. She held his gaze. That is a material difference, and I want to understand how that gap happened. Derek's jaw tightened slightly. I had reason to believe, he began. You had data, she said. The conclusion was an inference. You presented the inference as the data. She looked at the room. This is a meeting to correct the record. The detailed conversation about the process Derek used is a separate one. Patricia will schedule it this week. She looked at the table, at 11 people who had watched a CEO issue an order and then reverse it in the same afternoon. I got this wrong, she said, based on incomplete information processed too quickly. I want you to know I understand that. and that the reversal is as public as the order was, because that's the appropriate standard. She looked around the room. If anyone has questions, I'm available. Meeting closed. The room began to move. Derek Marsh left first. His face had the controlled expression of someone managing something at significant cost. Caroline Fenn, his assistant, who had been in the room and who had spent the past 2 hours circulating Derek's case to 3 other senior staff members by email, did not meet Vivian's eyes as she left. Margaret Aldrin, the senior strategy director, paused beside Vivian on her way out. "That was right," Margaret said, quietly. "Not a performance, just a fact stated to the relevant person." "It was necessary," Vivian said. "Same thing sometimes," Margaret said. She left. The room emptied. Vivian stood at the head of the table. James was at the door. He looked at her across the room. "All right," he said. She looked at the table, at the screen, now dark, at the chair where Derek had been sitting. "Ask me in the morning," she said. He almost smiled. It was the right response. By Thursday morning, Derek Marsh had received a formal written correction notice from Patricia Aldrin, documenting the specific gap in his case, the inference presented as documented fact, and requiring a written response. The notice was the first step in a formal disciplinary process. The process concluded 3 weeks later with a finding that Derek had presented unverified conclusions as documented findings, in violation of the company's research and reporting standards. He was reassigned from head of competitive intelligence to a supporting role in the competitive intelligence function, with a performance review scheduled for 6 months. He remained at the company. The reassignment was its own kind of consequence. Visible, specific. The kind that requires a person to look at what they built and understand what it lacked. Caroline Fenn received a formal warning for distributing unverified information to 3 senior staff members before the accusation had been substantiated. She acknowledged the warning in writing. She completed a mandatory professional standards review. She did not repeat the error. Her annual review the following year noted improvement in both areas. James submitted the Northeast report Thursday morning. It was 94 pages. Vivian read it in 3 hours. She sent 2 messages afterward. The first was a single line about one finding she wanted to discuss. The second was, "It's good work. It's been good work for 3 months. I should have said so more directly." He read this at his desk. He looked at the window. He thought about Zoe at the kitchen table that morning. Tell her today, whatever it is. You've been deciding it too long, and thought that he had told her, eventually, and that eventually had been the right time after all, even if it was not the time he had chosen. 3 weeks later, James woke at 5:40. The morning was the specific quality of late October, the particular amber of a city not yet in winter, but approaching it. He stood at the kitchen window. Zoe was at the table already, which was not unusual. She looked up when he came in. "You have a different face today," she said. "What's this one?" he said. She considered it. "The one where you stopped deciding something," she said. He looked at his coffee. On the refrigerator, Zoe's drawings, 4 of them, the gallery she had been building since they moved in. A new one was in the center, a building carefully rendered, with a figure visible through one of the office windows. She had added it this week. He had looked at the figure. He had known, without asking, who it was. "Is she coming for dinner Saturday?" Zoe said. "I haven't asked yet," he said. "Ask," she said. "Today." He looked at his daughter. She had the composed certainty of someone who had been right once about this and was counting on the streak continuing. "All right," he said. He made her eggs. He drove her to school. He sat in the car for a moment after she walked through the gate. He thought about 7 years ago, and 3 months of unpaid work, and a woman who had tried to find him afterward, and hadn't. He thought about 3 months of working in the same building without saying the thing that needed saying. He thought about a fire order and a file and a freeze and an afternoon that had been the loudest possible version of the thing that had needed to happen quietly months ago. He thought, Zoe was right both times. Tell her today, whatever it is. He picked up his phone. He texted Vivian, Saturday dinner, if you're free. Zoe's making the case for it, and she has a strong record. He put the phone down. He drove to the Meridian Group. The response came at 7:14. Zoe's record is compelling. What time? He read it at his desk. He typed, 6. Bring nothing. Zoe has a new drawing to show you. He put the phone in his pocket. He opened the Northeast Report follow-up and got to work. Because the work was the work and the Saturday was Saturday. And both of those things were true and both of them were good.